concept of God is like everything else in our vocabulary, man-made. It's an invention of human beings. As well as being man-made, it's fear-made. It is the unexpressed or partially expressed wish for a protector, a parent. At its best, it's that. It's a wish to be loved more than you probably deserve. And at its worst, it's the underdeveloped part of the human psyche that leads to totalitarianism, that wants to worship and that wants a boss, that wants a celestial dictatorship. And that's the bit that's now threatening to destroy our secular civilization. There was a belief that gods were in the trees, in the woods, in the springs, in the sea, in the clouds, and so forth. Then something a bit more polytheistic, like Olympus, where there was at least a location for the divine, but it was multifaceted. And then monotheism, getting it down to one. So I regard this as progress of a sort, because they're getting nearer the true figure all the time. Is there a God, a creator, a prime mover, an uncaused cause? And this was the question answered at a certain point, not very long ago in our history, by the deists, people like Thomas Jefferson, Thomas Paine, and many others, who said that there may have been a designer, but the designer didn't take any part in human affairs. But so believing that there might be a cause or a mover or a creator is one thing, but believing that there is a supervising, intervening entity who cares who wins the war, who cares who you sleep with and in what way, who cares what you eat and on what day, is another thing altogether. So people who say, I believe in God, I'm a deist, have all their work in front of them before they can say that they are really religious. There's nothing in the natural, in the cosmic order that isn't susceptible to a much better explanation. Every second that we're speaking, a star the size of our sun or bigger goes out, blows up or goes out. That's been the case every single second since the first moment of the Big Bang. And there's a lot of annihilation, isn't it? There's a lot of destruction. It's a rather what you might call almost a wasteful scale. It does have the positive outcome, though, that we are all constituted of those materials. We are made of stardust. Now, I find that a rather more majestic and wonderful and even beautiful idea than, say, the idea of the burning bush. One has the virtue of being true and provable and studyable, which the other doesn't. Until 50,000 years ago, there were 4 other kinds of biped, humanoid, not unlike us, still living on the planet, died leaving no descendants. We're the only survivors of those people. We don't know if they had gods or not. No religion ever invented appears to have known that these creatures even existed. The religious are forced to believe that the only really significant event that happened in the human story happened about 3,000 years ago. All of this massive Big Bang cosmological churning and destruction and annihilation, which is paralleled, by the way, on our own Earth, where 99% of all species that have ever been on the planet have already gone extinct, leaving no descendants. All of this could be part of a plan, but it's some plan, isn't it, with mass destruction, pitiless extermination, annihilation going on all the time, and all of this set in motion on a scale that's absolutely beyond our imagination. If you could, so to speak, put all that onto a tape and rewind it, and then press play again, there's no certainty it would come out the same way. In fact, there's every reason to believe that it would not. So there's nothing predetermined, there's nothing deterministic about this at all. But thanks to your understanding of our genetics, which are also not predetermined because they're a result of random mutation and natural selection, as everyone now knows, there's nothing deterministic about it at all. And yes, there are elements of, I was trying to say, the miraculous, the awe-inspiring, the tragic, the majestic in this, that there simply are not in the incantations of Genesis, where the supposed authors claim to know the divinity, the creator, on personal terms. This is nonsense. It's for children. If you say that no, it's because God has given you free will, I have to ask you, how do you know that? The view I take about free will is that of course we have free will because we have no choice but to have it. But to say, of course we have free will, the boss says we've got it, is to make a mockery of the whole concept. What sources of information do you have about this person's existence that I don't have, that are denied to me? I'd like to know. And second, why do you want it? Why do you want to arrive at a terminus of unfreedom where there is a celestial authority upon whom all things depend and from which all things flow? Why do you want that, and how on earth do you know that there's any case to be made for its existence?
Yes.
Einstein says the miraculous thing about the laws of nature is they're never suspended. That's what's so amazing about them, they're immutable. Religion claims that on occasions the laws of nature are suspended in order to prove.
One day.
You're right that science has made many things more comprehensible to us, and it's explained things that religion used to take credit for. In other words, now we know there's a germ theory of disease. Diseases are not curses or revenges from heaven. Same with earthquakes and so on. The stuff they used to teach us, and many of them still do, is nonsense. Evil nonsense as well as ignorant nonsense. But it's also taught us, just in my lifetime, an enormous amount more about how little we know. We're much, much more ignorant than people who lived before Galileo. Because we have now an increasingly large idea of the fantastic expanse of the unknown. That's precisely the moment at which to say that skepticism is what's necessary, inquiry, debate, doubt. Where's faith in this? Where's the usefulness of faith there? There's no use to it at all. No one will insult me if they say, Socrates, your great hero, didn't exist. Try it on a Muslim, try it on a Christian, their prophets didn't exist. Or tell people that Moses is a myth. They start hurling themselves about, making menacing noises very often. Socrates said, you're only educated when you've understood how ignorant you are. And you're only going to even find that out by doubting everything all the time. There's all the difference in the world between that outlook and that mentality, and the mentality of faith. And those who say God exists and intervenes in the world, in other words, those who say there is a religious God, the God of religion, are saying that redemption is on offer to human beings, that salvation is on offer to them, and that if they reject the offer, they can be in really big trouble. It's precisely because it claims to be a total solution, a complete solution to all problems, but available to you if you'll only have enough faith. Well, we've just found out that faith is probably the most overrated of the virtues and the one least useful to us in the real dilemmas that we actually have to face. As long as I don't have to hear about it, I don't mind what people believe. Just don't come to my front door with it. Don't ask for a tax break for it. Don't ask my children to be taught it in the schools. People think they have a personal relationship with the Creator, and they're the possessors of a wonderful secret. It must feel, I've never felt it, but I presume it feels great. Why doesn't it make them happy? They're not happy. They can't be happy till everyone else believes it too. You notice how often that religion, rather than answer the questions that I've put, like, how do you know there's a God? What evidence do you have for it? Which you say, well, lots of good people do good things because they're religious. Well, let's take the most recent pressing case. Richard Dawkins and I and a few others, in the response to the Haiti earthquake, set up an emergency charity for people of non-belief to give to, because so many charitable organizations are, in fact, proselytizing groups. So we raised about $2 million in a weekend. All that money went straight to Doctors Without Borders, of course, and the International Red Cross, which, though it has a cross, isn't a religious organization. Both these organizations are already in Haiti. They're proven. None of the money goes to support any missionary activity. None. And the Scientologists and all the others who turned up in Haiti, and the people who turned up in Haiti to kidnap babies to convert them to their faith, and the Catholics who turned up and said, standing in the ruins of their own cathedral, with 250,000 Haitians buried under the rubble, said, God spoke here today, and you should listen to his message. Don't tell me that's good, but that's wicked. It's proselytizing. It's proselytizing with the helpless, using them as objects of charity and conversion. It's lying to people. It's wrong to lie to people, and it's giving them false hopes and false explanations for their plight. I don't say bad things are done in the name of religion or by authorities. I say it's religion itself that is the problem. In Leviticus and in Exodus, if you're a neighbor, you better not, and you're supposed to love him. This person had better not be an Amalekite, a Midianite, a Moabite. Better not be a witch. Better not be a homosexual. Better not be a slave. The terms of enslavement of which are all laid out. Now, these are primitive, tribal, agricultural. Most of the commandments, by the way, all the Decalogue, by the way, is addressed to the property-owning classes. Here's what you can't do with your servants. Here, your servants must also obey this commandment. Why are the commandments addressed only to people who have staff? Why are the women rather a large objection, I'd have thought, why are the women counted as part of the animal and chattel that's disposable by these holders of property? Couldn't it be any more obvious that this is a man-made phenomenon, and at a time when people were not at their best and were full of fear and ignorance and greed and covetousness of other people's property? If what you say is true,
Yes.
not that, and I've never said, I couldn't be interpreted as having said no religious person can do a good thing. But if what you say is true, this should be true, and you should find it easy to point it out.
Okay.
There must be something, not that they can do or do, but that I cannot do, that's a good thing. Either a moral statement made, or a moral or ethical statement performed, that a person of faith could perform that I cannot. Get real. I mean, pronouncing an incantation
Yes.
isn't a moral action. If anyone can come up to me and say, here's a moral thing you couldn't do, not don't do, but could not do, that only a religious person do, I'd be very interested to hear of it. Think of a wicked thing done, or evil thing said, that is done precisely because of faith. You've already thought of one. No problem to you that the suicide murder community, the genital mutilation community, these are all faith-based communities. I spurn the gift. I don't want what you want. I don't want the feeling of eternal love and peace. Love and peace, very, very overrated in my view. I should despise all religions equally, but and I do in a way. But one way in which I prefer Judaism to its rivals is that the emphasis is more on justice than on love. The realm of illusion will not help you to cure this condition.
I do.
Well, if you'll pardon me, I won't share any of my griefs with you. But I've never had one, or known anyone who had one, who's had the faintest consolation from religion, and indeed being told, as the Christians tell them, that they're off to a better place and so on. I think it's positively wicked thing to do. I think lying to the dying for a living, what self-respecting person can do that?
Again.
Because the person saying it cannot possibly know it to be true, and philosophy and literature will do a great deal more for you. There's a lot more morality in them. But once you face the fact that you're born into a losing struggle, things immediately appear a great deal more manageable in some ways. There's no mystery about violence. I mean, violence arises because we are primates, imperfectly evolved. Our prefrontal lobes are too small, our adrenaline glands are too big. There are various other deformities of this kind. Sexual organs designed by a committee, all the rest of it. But we're incredibly prone to tribalism and ethnic and racial, what Freud calls the narcissism of small differences. So, of course, if a tribe, let's say, that's calling itself the Children of Israel, for the sake of argument, decides that it should kill all the other tribes that get in its way, take their women as slaves, butcher their men, take their land, take their cattle, and so battle in this way across to Canaan and take everyone else's land and burn down there. That's going to happen whether there's a God or not, or whether there's religion or not, but it'll happen very much more intensely if they believe they have a mandate from heaven to do so. It's a terrific force multiplier. Terrific force multiplier that the Catholic Church was as strong as it was in Rwanda, the most Christian country in Africa, made it infinitely worse. What makes the Israel-Palestine two-state solution ungettable? Because there's a chunk of people on both sides who say they have God in their corner and God gave only their group the land. And they can negate the votes of everybody else, including the whole of the international community, by the way, just because of their faith. It's infinitely worse because of religion. The less religion there was, the less violence there would be. The belt buckle worn by every soldier in the Nazi army that says, Gott mit uns, God on our side. I don't think that was a help to you. Things were bad enough as they were. On page 70, I think it is, of Mein Kampf, Hitler says that in taking on the filthy virus of Judaism, I know I'm doing the work of the Lord, and I'm summoned by the Lord to do this work. A book, one of the very few books the Vatican didn't ban in that period, by the way. I don't think that was a help either. So I'd say, on the whole, we'd be better off without the belief either in a supreme dictator, because that leads to violence, or the idea that God takes sides in our pathetic mammalian disputes. I suppose it is somewhat to the credit of some Christians that in the waning decades of thousands of years of slavery that were biblically mandated, whereas to the last day of the Confederacy, the flag of the Confederacy said Deo Vindice, God on our side. And every justification for that slavery came from the Bible, where indeed it's not hard to find it. Well, the Reverend L. Sharpton is another case of the damage done by to society by religion, because once it was agreed by the rest of America that black people are best led by preachers, once Dr. King has gone, it's one succession of junk demagogues after another, all of them given the mantle because they're in holy orders. There's no fraudulence you can't get away with in this country if you can get the word reverend put in front of your name. It's very often the first thing. When we debate with Catholics, they always change the subject to charity right away. With Jews, it's usually a little later. And with Muslims, it's
at the
all the time. What has this got to do with the existence of God or the validity of religious claims? It has nothing to do with it, except for a few bits of Afghanistan and El Salvador. Polio was almost gone from the world, and it spread back because largely Muslim groups in Nigeria and also in parts of Bengal and Afghanistan told people, don't go get your children inoculated. It's a plot by scientists and Jews and others to sterilize Muslims. That plus the wonderful devotional habit of going to Mecca all the time and taking all your diseases with you has meant that polio is back all the way across Africa now. All the science is going to do is keep on teaching us how little we know. Religion and science can coexist in the same person, that's true. Sir Isaac Newton was an alchemist, a very strong, if rather superstitious Christian. He thought the Pope was the Antichrist, might have been onto something there. But a very weird, full of very weird beliefs. I thought if you knew the measurements of the old temple, you'd know more than if you understood gravity. And now you can have private beliefs and be a scientific person. But no one says my science helps to vindicate my religion. No one says that anymore. That's not doable. The most commonly taken universal, absolute moral statement is what's sometimes called the golden rule. It says don't do to another person what would be repulsive to you. It's in the Analects of Confucius. I think that's what we'd have to take as the nearest to an absolute. It's obviously subject to various relativities, alas. For one thing, it's only really as good as the person saying it. Should I not do to Charles Manson what I don't want him to do to me? It's just like the contradiction between the Old and the New Testaments. The Old Testament says an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, which would lead to a very eyeless and toothless world. And then the Nazarene says, you can't condemn anyone unless you can cast the first stone. Actually, that bit was knitted into the Bible quite late and is almost certainly a fabrication. But it's believed in by many Christians who, as you know, will believe practically anything. But if you can't condemn anyone without being yourself without sin, then we can't even arrest Charles Manson unless we were sinless ourselves. So these moral absolutes are actually more full of moral relativism than you might think. And the reason people want there to be absolutes is this: they want there to be an absolute authority who can give them to you. Because wouldn't that save you all the trouble of thinking out ethics for yourself? Someone who goes to tell a child that if they don't behave well, they'll go to hell.
That wasn't the example that we used.
Someone who goes to the deathbed
and says that I believe that there's a world other than this one.
You're going to a better place is I think, a charlatan, a nauseating.
As a Sufi Muslim, I'm very ruffled by the title of your book. Of all the titles that you likely had at your disposal, did you have to settle for the literal negation of Allahu Akbar?
Yes. I think that all religions are wrong in the same way, in that they privilege faith over reason, but they're not all equally bad in the same way all the time. I mean, if I'd been writing in the 1930s, I would certainly have said that the Roman Catholic Church was the most dangerous religion in the world because of its open alliance with fascism and anti-Semitism, which the damage from that our culture has never recovered from and never will. But at the moment, it's very clear to me that the most toxic form that religion takes is the Islamic form. The horrible idea of wanting to end up with Sharia, with a religion-governed state, a state of religious law, and that the best means of getting there is jihad, holy war, and that Muslims have a special right to feel aggrieved enough to demand this, I think is absolute obscene wickedness, and I think their religion is nonsense. The idea of God speaks to some illiterate merchant warlord in Arabia, and he's able to write this down perfectly, and it contains the answers to all human. Don't waste my time. It's bullshit. The Archangel Gabriel speaks only Arabic, it seems. Remember, Islam makes one special claim for itself. All religions claim to be revealed truth. They all are founded by a divine revelation. But Islam dangerously says, ours is the last and final one. There can't be any more after this. This is God's last word. Now that's straight away a temptation to violence and intolerance, and if you note, it's a temptation they seem quite willing to fall for. So every Allahu Akbar reminds people that we're in a very serious struggle with a very depraved religion. Look, he believes in the prophecy of Muhammad. I'm sorry to say, I think he's been, at best, conned. I'm sure you saw it. The Pope's brother, Monsignor Georg Ratzinger, who runs the choir school in Regensburg. He's discovered recently there's been some unpleasantness at this school, of which he was the steward for about 20, 30 years. He said he didn't know about any of that, and surely he claims not to have taken any part in it, but he said he did used to smack the boys around quite a lot. He said until Bavarian law changed and made it illegal for teachers to hit children. Right. Well, I don't want to be told anymore that without religious people we wouldn't know what morality was. He didn't know this until the secular law intervened and taught him how to behave. What is the whole racket of the church in this? Protecting itself from it, saying they were all ordered, don't go near the courts, don't go near the police, we'll sort this out among ourselves. And they say they're the people who prevent us from succumbing to moral relativism. I'm not hearing it from them. I'm sorry, it's insulting to be talked to in that way. The great recent governor of this state, Mr. Romney, wants to be president. Okay, there's a constitutional issue here. Mormons are supposed to say that they're prophet, as they call their leader. His word is sovereign over anyone else's, including the Constitution of the United States. So Romney has to say, and finally people did force him to answer the question, well, do you think that about your prophet? He said, no, the Constitution takes precedence in all cases. Fine. So to the extent that he's an acceptable person, it's to the extent he's not a Mormon. The discipline of secularism is necessary to civilize these superstitions. I hope very few of you begin your day by thanking God that you're not a female or a goy.
Well, who do you think in our society is winning this debate? The atheists, the new atheists, the religious? Where's the center of gravity going? And this will be the last question, I'm afraid.
I think a very large number of people, and they say this based on experience debating in a large number of churches and synagogues, go there for some of the reasons the rabbi gives. Community, charity, self-help, often they run a school, this kind of thing. They don't really believe the holy books. They don't think they have been specially noticed by God or can expect any special favors from him. But they see, as it were, no harm in it. And there's a great deal of schism among those who do believe, enormous amount of schism. So when people say in opinion polls that, or when you read that 90% of Americans believe in the virgin birth and in Satan and so forth, I don't believe it at all. I think that underneath this there's a huge crust of doubt and a great resentment against American theocrats. I think that the supposed religious monolithic nature of America is grossly overstated. It doesn't describe reality. But those who say that they have no faith and no allegiance to any church has doubled in the last few years, and that's according to a decent opinion survey, the Pew one.
Is Mr. Hitchens himself really as great an atheist as he claims?
He's pretty good. Yeah, he's pretty good.
What has this got to do with the existence of God or the validity of religious claims? It has nothing to do with it.
Wait. No, don't applaud that.
Nothing to do with it.